thank you for taking the time to talk to our guys. I know a lot of them have questions for you. We have Casey Fisher, who is our senior manager with us, and Mike McCabe is one of our advisors. Mike Harris is our admin chief, and who always has a poker face. and then
don't let him
and then BJ is another advisor, and he will be joining us in a little bit. And I don't know if our director John will be able to attend or not, so we will see. Everybody that I see, a lot of my woodworkers are here, which is great. Hopefully some more will pop in. Thank you everybody for taking the time to be here with us. I know everybody's getting excited and has a lot of questions for Ethan. So I'm going to pass it over to Ethan, give a little bit of a background. I know we sort of talked a little bit there, but for the guys that are just joining us.
Yeah, of course. I guess, you know, learning about me is only exciting for me to talk about it. So I'm sure, you know, you all have questions about actual woodworking and woodworking business. So I'll be quick with my intro and then we can get back in there. And I'm always happy to go back into more of the backstory if anyone has questions about that. I always subscribe to the idea, even as an adult, the same idea that, you know, a kid has, where you say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say the most exciting thing that comes to their mind. And, you know, I've always gone with that idea. So I had a music career. I worked in commercial interior design for Macy's and Calvin Klein. I worked in advertising for Major League Baseball. I had a stuffed animal company that I got produced overseas. I sold Christmas trees in the West Village. I did a lot of stuff just trying to find what made me happy. And I decided that I didn't want a boss. I didn't want to send things overseas. I didn't want to do stuff on the computer. I wanted to get an actual raw material in my hands and beginning of the day have an idea and work through the day and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, and the end of the day hopefully have something that I could actually show, like a physical product, and something that I could sell myself and I could stand behind. And woodworking really appealed to me for that reason. I left my jobs. I started an unpaid apprenticeship in this shop in Queens, worked my way up to a full-time job there, went to another shop, worked my way up to shop foreman there, was working for them 8 to 5 o'clock, and then renting their space from 5 o'clock to 2 in the morning, something like that, wherever the day took me. Worked like that for a while until my own business eclipsed working for somebody else, and have been on my own ever since 2008. I do custom work, anything from bedside tables all the way up to full brownstone renovations. I've had a number of crews, up to 5 guys working for me at a time. And I also have the other side of my business, which is a collection of furniture that I sell in stores and have in museums and homes and places across the country and the world. So that's that side of the business. And recently I've been getting more into woodworking event hosting. I host like IWF in Atlanta, which is the biggest tool woodworking show in the country, AWFS in Vegas, which is the second. I do a lot of maker shows. I do a lot of like the woodworking shows. That's something that travels around the country. I host that. And I also make content for a lot of companies internally and also on social media. So that's the very quick rundown of a very strange and journeyed life that I've had down a lot of different paths. And again, happy to answer any questions on that, or happy to jump right into your questions about your actual woodworking businesses, the business side of it or the technical side of it, or I'm always into just oddball questions if you want to throw it out, like, no, I actually don't know how to ride a bike, which is a weird thing for everyone to find out about me. But other than that, I'm good to go. I'm not sure how you usually do it. If you usually, you know, I have it so I have everyone on the screen. So if people want to raise hands, Brooke, if you want to call people out, or if you have questions, I'm happy to do it however you want.
Yeah, I can put everybody on the screen as well. That's a good way to do it. Sometimes there's like a little actually button that you push to raise a hand, but Yeah.
I'm
However,
yeah, I'm
um,
not. I will say at the beginning, I'm not good at computers and
yeah.
technology. So if I don't know how, if I don't do this well, this is like my third Zoom call ever. So just let me know how it goes, and I'll go.
Okay, understood. I think a lot of our guys, everybody's at a different place right now in their business. Some have just started up and they're in the very ground nitty gritty start of getting started. And
Mhm.
some are more advanced and make fine furniture and sell. I know COVID has impacted a lot of them since wasn't technically an essential business in a lot of places, depending on where you lived. Um, and you said you had to shut down one of your shops and move. But how how would you tell them? I know a lot of them are looking for ways to still keep their name out there and market, but not being able to show their furniture and have clients come in right now. What's a good way that they could um, still keep their business moving forward versus at a standstill?
Yeah, if you can't have people physically come to you, again, I just said that I'm terrible at computers, but social media is really, and it seems like at this point like a given because it's so built into society, but a lot of people aren't really using it for how they should be using it. You can say, oh, I don't really have a big following, I don't really want to put that much energy into it and all that stuff. But if you put your portfolio, just take Instagram for example, which is totally picture based and video based, and you can put your entire portfolio out on that. And even if you have a small following, you can always reach out to bigger influencers, bigger people like that, and just start a conversation with them. And I know a tremendous amount of these people in the industry, and they're just genuinely good people and the whole reason they're on there and the whole reason they're succeeding is because they like to engage with the audience. And if you reach out to them, I can't guarantee every single time it will be a home run on everything, but if you start having a conversation with them or share your work, then there's always that chance of a repost or a mention. And it seems like a silly little thing, and I get it. Social media always seemed to me like teenage girls and sharing food and what like that. But really, you can have 100 followers, but pictures on there, and somebody with a giant following just reposts it. It gets 10,000 eyes on it, and somebody local just happens to be like, oh, I know that person, and that is a sale right there, or that's a conversation starter. And it is, advertising is great. Magazines, newspapers, all that stuff. But this is just free, and it takes no money. It just takes your time, and you make a good connection, and hopefully you make a sale. Also, reaching out to just any type of editor in the business, like a physical magazine or newspaper, or websites, blogs, things like that. Just reaching out and sharing a story, because when everyone's stuck in their homes and no one's really going out all that much, and people are looking for content to consume, and just it doesn't cost you anything, which is the amazing part. Like, you used to have to spend money in ads and do ad buys, and even if it's on the internet, you'd have to do ad buys for being on pages. And now it's just, you just have a good story, you just make a connection, and you get all that press that you can handle. So that would be the first step that I would do, if you can't have people buy the shop. And people buy stuff all over the country and have it shipped. It really depends on the story. And I know that people who are giant in their business do this, and I know people who are just starting out in their business. People who are selling 30 conference tables and shipping them from New York to California, or somebody in Ohio who's making custom cutting boards and shipping it to the next town over. Like, it works for you no matter where your business is.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I know, Caleb, you have a question, and I will get to you next, but you had just mentioned something about shipping, Ethan, and I know a few of my guys had a question about how you ship items and how you put the costs together Do you put it into your product and then put free shipping, or, you know, because it depends, because you don't want to send the product in pieces because not everybody can put it together. Just kind of how you do your shipping costs and things like that.
Obviously, you know, different company levels and different products that you're selling, so it's sort of hard to speak to an overarching thing like that. You know, if you're doing something that's small and you can ship with just out of the store boxes, or you are making your own custom boxes but you're still small, just setting up a account with one of the major shippers, just a UPS or a FedEx. Setting up, it's a super simple thing, but if you just set up a business account with a rep there, then they are a dedicated person to you, and you can always call them up and get all the shipping information based on that. Or there's a different end of their websites that you can send in. You can get all your shipping information there. And for larger stuff, I have a freight company that I use that will pick things up, and they will quote it out for me exactly. And they will also offer white glove delivery. So if something that needs to be assembled, they will take care of that. Or if it's just curbside delivery with a crate, then they will do that. For building it in to the pricing, when I'm starting out, I built a lot of the pricing, a lot of the shipping into my pricing. And as after a couple years, I decided, and I said, you know, free shipping and everything like that. And I thought that would be a big draw. But after a couple years, I realized that was just, at least from on my end, that was just driving my prices up to parts that I didn't want them to be. And the initial sticker shock of a client or a customer, you know, seeing that and saying, oh, you know, I'm looking at this table here, and it seems like $1,000 more than this table here, and it seems like the same table. And the idea of shipping doesn't really come into it until they're at checkout, and then they've already made a commitment to it, you know, a mental commitment to doing it. And they're like, oh yeah, we get it. Shipping, that's something that, you know, tax and shipping, that's always something that's added on. So I have it in after, just so the initial sticker shock is not hurtful to the client looking at it.
Okay, awesome. Zach, do you mind unmuting Zach Casey?
I can read lips too.
Can't hear you, Zach.
Zach, you should be unmuted on our.
He's unmuted. I just don't hear him. Every time I talk to Zach, he tells me how bad he is with computers. So, okay, one moment. All right, we'll come back to you, Zach. Okay, is that okay? All right. Do you mind unmuting Caleb? I know he had a question.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey.
So I'm fairly new, starting out, like, okay, really new. I also tend to obsess over things, and I deal a lot with paralysis by analysis when it comes to, like, when I'm trying to design something new, or, you know, even when I start building it, I'll get halfway through and I have an epiphany and, like, oh, I got to rechange everything. And then I spend about, you know, days on one thing and don't have anything done and a bunch of junk laying around. So what's kind of your process when you're either designing something new or maybe just a new layout for your business or what have you?
What kind of stuff are you built? Like, what kind of, just so I have a context for it?
Just right now, some basic, like, rustic home decor kind of things. It's nothing crazy. The main problem I had was when I was trying to lay out my my garage. I'm working on my garage right now, so just trying to get all the tools I needed, but also in a way that made sense. So
yeah, I can. So I'll hit that question in a couple different ways. One, with laying out a shop, you will, like, as somebody who has laid out a lot of my own shops and who does that slightly professionally for a lot of my friends or a lot of people that I know, and laying out shops just because I've been doing it for so long. your shop is always going to change no matter what you decide is the best layout. Once you start working in it and once you start figuring out the flow, the shop's just going to change just for how you work, especially if you're doing custom stuff and you're changing up what you're doing every single time. So don't worry about, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. I completely understand, but don't worry about, you're like, oh, it's, next week, it's a week gone and you're like, oh, I realized I really want the, the planer over there. Or I really want the miter station over there. It's happens in every single shop and even years down the line. So that's not, that's completely normal to do. The process, like I usually set up my shop where I have my lumber and sheet goods all the way in the back. I have a big panel saw. I have that on the back wall usually, and I have table saw. I usually like to do the process of the way the piece starts with the chop saw, table saw, panel saw, all that stuff at the back, and sort of have it with my tables and my finish and my sanding areas in the front, and just have it laid out like that, just because that's the process of the piece, because I know it's going to go out the door, and the more finished it gets, the closer it is to the door. That's how I like to lay it out. Obviously, I don't know your setup, so I can't comment on that, but that's mine. For building furniture, I have ideas. I have concepts for new pieces. If I'm doing a client piece, then I have it drawn out. I have it done in, I have renders. I have all that stuff just so they can look at it. If I'm doing it for myself, then honestly, I just start building, and I just start figuring it out as it goes. And it's a interesting process to do it in, because sometimes it might not work, but it works better for me that way, because I'm more of a visual person, and I can think it in my mind and say, okay, I want these connections to be here. I want this to be here. And it's always different in your mind than it is out there. So I just start building stuff. And that was one of the reasons actually where I transitioned from doing a lot of wood stuff into a lot of metal stuff, because I'd have it in my mind, these like intricate designs, and I'd be drawing them on paper and spending all this time designing them out. And then when I started building them, I realized that it was just not a stable design to build. So I'd switch into doing it in metal. And if I hadn't built so many of those as I was going, and actually physically having in the space and seeing how they work and seeing how they function, then I wouldn't have known that they weren't working. So, you're just starting out. I wouldn't get too locked into any ideas and think like, this one is going to be the finished one. I would use material that, I would use material that is not maybe your finished material, and I would do mock-ups, and I just build different sections of it. Even if you're just working on like a leg connection, I would just build that section. I wouldn't build the whole thing. I would just do that, physically understand how that goes together before I would jump into doing it for real. So I'm a visual guy. I think everyone who does woodworking is very visual in that sense, and it just makes more sense that way. So I just jump into it and go from there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks. Zach, do we got you yet?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
My life is sorted out for today. Ethan, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I got the same track of mind thinking of how I do woodwork. I just go as it go. But back to the shipping part. Sorry to rewind here.
No. Just saying, if I answer anyone's question and it doesn't feel like I didn't hit on your answer, or if you have a follow-up question, feel free. I talk all day, every day, so ask as many questions as you want.
No, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, the whole white glove delivery, I actually got a hold of someone in California. I was talking with them about that for larger pieces, because I fairly standardized smaller pieces like butcher blocks, cutting boards, charcuterie boards, wine racks. The smaller standardized shipping stuff, you can go to UPS or FedEx and throw it in a normal box. So that price point's been simple. One thing I haven't found out yet is you kind of answer that question as far as that price is variable depending on where it's going, how big it is for the delivery service. But that was kind of a big one for me is if I build a table, I'm building a table here in the next week for someone, and my concern as it gets to them, I can't expect them to be able to put it together, and they want it built out of walnut and Western white maple, and I'm telling them the weight of it, the sheer weight of it. I was like, it's, you know, I want to make sure they understand the costs associated with the shipping, and so that's why that was kind of part of my question. You kind of answered it, and it's finding that solid delivery service that you can assure that piece is going to get from A to B in a good fashion. It's not going to show up with a stringer of a cut through the top of it because somebody was just throwing it around during delivery.
Yep. And that, you know, you just, like, I've had a lot, like, always get the insurance. Always get the most insurance. You, like, when you're renting a car, always get the most insurance on it. And when you're delivering furniture, because I do very big metal pieces, like metal tables that are just solid, and they've shown up and they've been just bent at like in crazy ways, and which would have had to have been, they'd have to have run a forklift over it. And, you know, you just have to have them open it up, and so always get the insurance on that. Yeah, if you find a good, and there's a lot of very good white glove delivery services out there that do it, or going back to reaching out to the woodworking community, I have a lot of people who across the country, whenever they have something that they're delivering to New York City, I have a good friend in Nashville who runs a store, and whenever he has something that's more complicated, he reaches out to me and he says, hey, you know, could you lend a couple of your guys to, you know, they're going to curbside deliver this. Could you uncrate it? Could you set it up and put it in the plate and put it in the space, and make sure, you know, you're answering all the client's questions for that. And so that is, if you have some people in the area or feel like there's people that you want to reach out to in that area, that's also another good way to do it. And then it's not only making the connection with another woodworker, it's also giving other people business, and then they'll return the favor in the future. And it's, you know, you feel like it's in better hands than, say, just a moving company who might not have, you know, the best interest of the furniture at heart, because they have to finish that up so they can deliver a piano in, you know, the next 20 minutes. So
Yeah.
those are two ways to go. But white, you know, ship it as big as you can, and people have to understand that it costs money to ship something, and if they, you know, they have to decide if they want the craftsmanship or if they want it cheap, and you can't have both. So
Yeah.
you just have to approach that and be totally honest with them and say, hey, this is my cost, and I'm not making any money on this shipping. I'm not making any money on that. And just, you know, if you want it, then that's all I can do. So
Yeah, that's, I mean, I've had to explain cost of product to people before, where I kind of, you know, because I live out in Oregon, so I'll go fell some of my own trees out here and throw them in a kiln, or get rough cut timber and, you know, mill it down from there for the project. But yeah, that whole shipping thing, it seems like it's always been that you get all the way to that point where you're going to send it, and you're like, all right, I just spent how many hours on this project, days or weeks, depending on how big it is. Now is it going to get from A to B safely? So I thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Just as for, you know, spending all that time on it, when I do pricing, and I don't know if this is a question coming up, but I'll just jump to it because I always think it's very important. When I have a new client, and I don't do any, you know, I don't do any mock-ups, I don't do any drawings, I don't do any concepts, just a couple emails back and forth. I get the idea and I give them a ballpark price before I even do anything. For some projects, before I even do drawings, I take a deposit on the project. That way I'm not out time, money, and they have a design that they either don't like and go with somebody else, or love and bring to somebody else who's local, or who they might think it, you know, shop around and do it cheaper. So I'm all about getting money before I do any work. And yeah, I might have lost some clients doing that because they say, we want to see what it looks like. And I send them my entire portfolio and I say, I can make very nice furniture. I can make your furniture very nice based on this, but I don't do stuff for free. So I might lose clients for that, but I also don't lose money up front on that.
Right.
We'll aside, but that's, something that I always keep in the back of my mind. And it took me a long time to get to that point where I felt confident enough to say my time is actually worth money, and my time, not physically building it, but the other parts of it as well, my time writing emails, my time coming up with ideas, my time doing drawings, that's also worth money, and I should be compensated for that as well.
Right, I agree. And that's something that all of you should think about too, is if, I know Calvin, he makes some higher end furniture as well. I don't know if you do that already and get a deposit down from people or not, but that's something to consider moving forward now if you don't do that already. Calvin, I know you have a question as well, but Rick, he was next in the queue. Casey, if you don't mind getting to Rick.
Hey, brother.
Hey.
All right. So I know better to work with wet wood, but I wasn't having much luck finding some lumber out here for a picnic table for a firefighter MC. And so shopping around in all the big box stores, a lot of the local places, wasn't finding what I needed, right? Apparently the whole world's building stuff right now during this pandemic.
Yes.
And so moisture content was high. So I decided to order online, right? Because you had the choice of ordering like that green stuff or dried stuff. So at the end of the day, I went to go pick up my stuff. They provided wet stuff. I'm on a timeline. I've already been paid for a project, right? I got a couple weeks to throw this together. I try to let the wood sit in my shop and acclimate, for about a week before I started. So it also cut into my building, staining, sealing deadline. I ended up building this thing anyways, instead of just turning the project away and refunding them, considering, some of the things that were out of my hands, right? Mm-hmm. But I built it anyways, because one, I wanted the experience of building a picnic table. Two, I wanted to see how far I could go manipulating this wood, burning it, right? Trying to suck out some of that moisture, sitting it out in the sun, etc. I value the learning lessons just as much as the money, right? So
yeah, well, that's how you got to do it. Yeah, you got to, crawl before you walk. So
right. So long story short, built this table, set it out in the sun, because my stain wasn't drying and I still needed to seal it, right? So sit out in the sun for a couple hours, starting to see some warping, twisting, expansion, contraction, right? And even around the areas that were glued, screwed, seeing some major gaps. So I actually wrote the customer and said that I'm not going to provide the product because I value what I put out. And I also value the safety, the longevity of the project. I didn't want something falling apart or somebody getting hurt because of this stuff still moving around, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how long wet wood continues to move. I know it'll always have some type because the hot and cold that goes on, especially in Oregon. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to, say I run into this problem again, right? Are there any like tips or tricks to kind of dry out or acclimate your wood in a shop a little faster, with small use of like heaters or an enclosed easy up around your material, or something that's, I don't have a super large space or the money to dump anything. So I'm using small space heaters or heat guns or burning wood or whatever. Mm-hmm. Any tips or tricks to kind of dry things out a little faster?
Yeah, I guess,
I guess stay away from it completely.
Say that again.
or just stay away from it completely.
You know, your project is only going to be as good as the material that you start with. And if you're starting with bad material, and not saying it's bad material, but if you're starting with, you know, wet wood or wet lumber or something that, you know from the beginning is not good, then I would automatically, my first reaction would be to shy away from that, to return that material, to say this is not what I ordered, and to get new material. With that said, sometimes it's not possible. I don't really do it that much anymore, because anytime I need lumber, I have it kiln dried from a big place. But you can always build your own smaller kiln, just box it all out. I don't know your space. I don't know the amount of material you have. But if you enclose that and then space heat that, and I know there's a lot of very good YouTube tutorials on building that can give you more information on that. If you have that option, then I would go with that. Putting it out in the sun, doing that is always good. It seems like this lumber must have been very, very wet, because you seemed like you did pretty much everything that you could to it. If that isn't the case, and you still want to go ahead with it, and you still have to go ahead with it, and that's, deadlines or something like that, one, I would not recommend going ahead with it. And two, if you needed to, then I would use a lot of metal bracing, going like route out metal bracing underneath everything, on the ends and the middles and everything like that, just because if you have that, then it will hold it in place a lot more. And even if it does start to bend out of shape, it will conceivably, hopefully, go back to that shape more than, say, if you were just letting it grow on its own and move on its own. So as much bracing as possible. I would use more intense glues than just an average wood glue, because it's not going to work as well on the wet material. And was it pressure treated, or was it just regular?
It wasn't pressure treated.
Yeah, I would just if you have to, and again, I don't recommend it, but if you have to, just over engineer it as much as possible, right, and do all your work outside if possible. And yeah, do exactly what you were doing. There was nothing wrong with what you did. It was just, you just had bad material to start with. Yeah. So that's, okay. Yeah. And clients have to understand that woodworking is different than all the other trades. Like, you're a plumber or you're an electrician, and things are very, very set. And there's no, you can go to a store and you can buy the same type of part every single time, and it's not going to change. But every single time you build a piece of furniture, it is a live thing, and it is different, and it is not exactly the same every single time. And so people just have to understand that that's a part of the business, and right, it's not mass-produced stuff. It's not, done in China particle board that everything is set. And sometimes deadlines take longer, and sometimes, sometimes material isn't right. And if you have an understanding client, which none of us ever have, but if you somehow miraculously find one, then you just explain it and say, this is it, and I don't want to give you inferior material. And you can either say, yes, I'll take it with the time frame, or I want to find somebody else. And that's, that's a battle that you're going to have to lose, because you'd much rather stop the project and refund the money than spend the next 4 years remaking this table and putting all your time and energy into that. So right, that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick, and thanks, Ethan. Calvin, I know you have a question. Casey, you mind unmuting Calvin? He's not unmuted. There you go.
I think I unmuted it.
There you go. Yeah,
really,
I can hear you.
Ethan, before I ask you this, Rick, there's a book, I believe it's called Wood, and it'll tell you every single domestic wood in the U.S. or around the world, every cut, radial, tangential, riff sawn, quarter sawn. It's stability and what it's good for. And sorry, Ethan, it came to me and I didn't want to forget it.
No,
But
not at all.
It's a really good reference book, especially if you're doing an outdoor project versus indoor. Will you use mahogany, white oak? It'll give you a better resource so you have less failures or issues with it.
Yep.
If that helps.
It's a good book, and it's written by this guy. I forget his name, but he's in the city, and I've talked with him before, and he's a good guy, and he, when it's a one title book, it's it's got it. It's not hiding any fluff behind it. It's right to the point. So I agree.
Awesome. And Calvin, he's up in New Hampshire, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and he makes more higher end furniture and stuff. I know he's
I see your clamps and your dust collection in the background. So
my wife's on a Zoom call, so I had to get shunned to the basement.
Got to show off your shop to everyone.
Mess. My question was, how do you manipulate pricing? So when I do, spec work versus commission work, a commission, I'm sort of along the lines of you where I'll say it's $200 for me to draft this for you and give you a quote. And then I come back and I sometimes I fudge my hours, if that makes sense. If I want to charge $50 an hour labor and I know it's going to be a 6-week project, there's times where I might charge 45 and turn it into 8 weeks, knowing it's going to be an issue, or there's the potential for issues with it. If you're building a William and Mary sideboard or a Chippendale chair, the odds of something breaking, needing attention is larger than making spec work. So my question is, how do you change your pricing for spec work versus commission work? Do you mock something up and say, okay, this took me 12 hours to make with a domino and pocket screws, where it takes me 22 to build it mortise and tenon? How do you charge the same rate, or do you just say, this shaker table is $800 regardless how I build it, because I know I can make them in 20 hours?
So your question is, if I just want to answer it correctly, your question is, do I do my pricing based on the actual time I know it's going to take, or do I do it based on the projects? Is that what the question is?
I guess sort of. It's, do you charge differently for a spec piece? You say you have furniture lines. So
yeah.
For instance, you have one coffee table, you can build in 20 hours and it's $200 of material. Would you price it the same as you would charge a commission piece, if that makes sense?
No.
Okay.
I for a couple different reasons. One, for the stuff in the collection, I know that number one, I know how to build it. I have the shop set up. I can build it for that. So I know what goes into that. And I also know that I'm selling a lot of this stuff retail, which means wholesale, which is either a 50-50 or a 60-40 split. So my pricing for that stuff is much different than a custom piece. So custom piece is, materials, shop time, drawing time, plus all the time that I know is going to go into it with me, cursing and getting frustrated and throwing stuff and everything like that. And then, so that's how I price that. And then collection pieces are definitely priced differently, and they are priced based on similar pieces in the market and again, with the, with the 50%, 60% built in, things like that. So my margins are much different, and I price them both out differently. One thing I want to go back to just before I forget is with the pricing, how I said that I usually don't take any projects without getting payment up front. And we were also talking about shipping, that my split is 50% before any work gets started, then 40% before the piece is delivered. So that's like the day before or a couple of days before. So before it even gets shipped out, I have 90% in my pocket, and then I leave 10% on the table in case it gets there and there's an issue or something like that, that I would have to refund the money, because I would much rather, especially with furniture, because the physical thing, once it gets there, you're not getting it back unless you're, breaking into their house at night and stealing a dining room table out. So I want to have 90% in my pocket. That way, if there's any issues with the piece, if there's any issue with the coloring, if a client just doesn't want to pay, then I know I have that money already. And if they don't want to do that, then the piece doesn't go out the door, because I'm not going to lose 50% of my money on this. Yes, there are times and clients that are different, and you have to make exceptions, and you can't always, in business, you can't always have a hard, fast rule for everything, but that's how I do it usually. And did I answer the collection pricing versus custom pricing? Okay. Feel free to ask a follow-up on that, because that's how I do it. But again, there's different pricing when it comes to custom pieces as well. So it's a pretty broad question. So if you had a specific one, I'd be more than happy to jump back into that as well.
Well, for instance, my main issue is I went to school for period furniture. That's pretty much what I've been doing. And I've been working with a period maker and stuff. But with COVID, I lost a couple clients because our lumber yards were shut down up here. I could get no exotics, no domestics, nothing. So I lose clients. So I'm trying to juggle, do I spend time and effort and money into making sort of spec work, not necessarily a furniture line, but basic tables that people like. Do I invest time and energy into that and sit on them where I don't have a showroom? I'm very, very rural. I'm 2.5 hours north of Boston. There's no cities by me. So I'm not in a position where I've got retail space like you or somebody else. So I'm just trying to figure out if somebody in my position, if it's worth developing a spec line or, spec pieces versus just sit and wait for commissions,
Mm-hmm.
And if I do develop, sort of spec work, do I just say, everything is this price because I know I can build it this way? Or, do you find you manipulate pricing more, just to meet the same margins? So when I do a commission piece, I try to get an hourly rate and turn, 60%, I'm trying to pocket 60% at the end of the day. Or if I'm making, I can make cherry shaker tables in 2 days and it costs me all of $60 of material. So do I just say, whether it's 2 days, 4 days, that's a $300 table? Or, I'm just trying to figure out what's the smart thing to do where I'm still making money and not losing money, and also not wasting my time, because time is money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Personally, I always like the idea of having collection pieces that people can just purchase as is. And if you have the time to make those and you're not in the middle of custom work, then you're not losing anything, because a piece like that, say, you're saying you can make a cherry table, all day long. You make one, you take a picture of it, you have it on your website, and that doesn't change. And that can always, somebody could always buy that. And that doesn't have to be a custom piece, and that doesn't have to be something that you spend any more time on than that initial investment of building it. And you don't even have to, you can just build, and you can keep it in your house. You just have those pictures, and you just have a solid line of pieces, however many it is, 1, 2, 3, that is always out there, and people can always say, I like that table, I want one of those. So if you have the time, I would say it definitely makes sense to invest in building pieces like that. And that works for anything. That works for anything from tables all the way down to, cutting boards or something like that, where if you have a line of something, it shows that you're established, that you have, you have that extra layer of you where you do 2 things where people can say, and people can look at that and say, as a starting point, I really like that. Can you customize that? And then you say, yes, I can. Here's my custom rates after that. So I would recommend, especially if you don't have a showroom where people are seeing it, then they have no way to, yes, you have custom stuff, but they might, custom stuff is very client to client based. And if you have a standard, straight down the line, standard table, people like different, and they like the idea of different, but usually when they're trying to add something to their home, they go pretty standard for the most part, for big ticket items like tables and chairs and things like that. So long story short, I would say if you have the time, make the collection and have it there, and at least you have two different parts of your website or stuff that you're showing, and you can say, you can point to that. That's what I would say. And just because you have the pricing for that collection piece doesn't mean when it becomes custom that your pricing structure stays the same. It jumps to a whole different thing. You say, yes, this is the price because I know this is what I make a lot of these, but if you want to customize, then the price increases, and then you go into your custom pricing, and you can add that in, and that's not a strange thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Mike McCabe, I know you said some of your guys that weren't able to be here today had some questions. I didn't know if you wanted to ask Ethan some of those for them.
Sure, that'd be great. Can you guys hear me?
What am I looking? Yep, there you
go. So two things. One, I have a brand new woodworker. Just resources, guides. How did you get started? How did you develop your skill? And is there any type of like continuing education courses, books, that type of thought process? So more so, we're talking about more so the beginner of how to get better skills in working.
Yeah. Me starting out is much different. Me starting out back in 2005, 2007, the landscape is much different for digital learning than it is today. I am personally associated with Woodworkers Guild of America. I do videos for them. I'm not pushing that for any monetary.
That's where
gain.
I found you at, by the way.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Well, then I'm pushing it for that. Anyone who's looking to get me onto a talk, go there. But something like that just comes to mind, where they just a wealth of knowledge. And I have so many friends that all make the exact same YouTube video on how to build the exact same thing, and that's the reason that I haven't really jumped into that space, because there's just so much knowledge there that I couldn't really add to it. With that said, learning from watching a video is great. Learning from actually physically doing it is even better. And if you have the space, or if you have a friend that has the space, or if you have a maker space or a building space, or I know woodcraft stores, they usually have classes and things like that. It depends on how much of a beginner you are. I don't recommend not knowing how to use tools and going, just for legal reasons, and not recommending going out and, jumping on your first table saw without having any practice or knowing how to do it, because that is the way you hurt yourself. But I recommend just putting the time in, and that's what I did. I worked nonstop, and I still do. I get up at like 5 a.m. and I work till, I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And granted, my time now is spent between office hours and also, dealing with clients and dealing with, guys in my shop who are building things and supervising and going on installs and things like that. But even when it was just me, I just worked like crazy. I always played sports when I was younger, and less so now that I'm older and frailer and people, push me out of the way. But now I always had that mentality that if I like when you like playing basketball and you wake up really early and you're like, I'm out here practicing, and if I'm not practicing, then somebody else is out there getting better than me. And I have that feeling, if I'm not building and I'm not making something, then there's somebody else building and making something and developing skills that are better than mine. And if I'm not putting the work in, then I'm not progressing. So just really just putting the physical time in, because it's a physical thing. It's not a computer thing. It's not you know, you can't do it from a home office. You have to actually physically put the time in to learn how to do it. So those are my two options.
Yeah, you bet. I got one more question from another guy who wrote me. And I know you kind of touched on it. It's about pricing, but specifically you want to know if, do you factor in, is another new woodworker here as well. Do you factor in your profit margin, labor, the labor cost, wear and tear on equipment? How do you break down, for example, say it was a table, for example, how would you break down for yourself what it's costing to make it to what you're making for profit? Can you explain that in a little more detail?
So I now do it. I can just do I've done it enough that I do the mental configuration in my head, and I know, you know, I know where I want to be on a piece, and I know, you know, if that's a table, I can figure out what went into it and where I need it to be based on hours and everything like that. When I used to all about Excel. I used to just put in all my numbers and have everything from the material, you know, $4,000 of material, all the way down to I'm going to use $7 worth of glue in this project. And you just mark that all out, and you have all that information, all your material, you have your hourly rates, you mark all that down. You have, I don't really do that much wear and tear on machines, because you can go crazy with that. Like if I know that I have to build, if I know, like, okay, this project, I'm going to need like a second XL domino, I'll build that into the price, but I'm not going to build in, like, you know, I'm using Purple Heart, and it's, you know, my blade has been in there for 3 weeks, and if I do this, I'm going to have to buy a new blade. Like, you know, you can go crazy with that, with the details, and that sort of, you know, you sort of bog down in that. You can always just add a little money at the end there. And once you have all that, you just have to figure out, you also have to add in, you have to keep in mind, like your open costs, like what you need to open the shop doors every single day, which is your internet. Well, it depends where you are, but you know,
right.
The price for renting your shop, your internet, your electricity, all that stuff. You want to have a day rate for yourself or for your guys. If you're paying people, you want to have that, and you just have that all in a big sheet, and those numbers come out, and then you just figure out what your margins, what you want to be. I know Calvin said 60% he wants to hit like that, and you hit, you know, you figure out exactly what you need to make, and that is based on what you're making, also where you're located. But you figure out your margins, and then that's your number, whether it's crazy or not. You know, you don't want to lose money, and you can adjust your margins accordingly, but you need to write all that stuff down. If you're beginning and you don't have that in your mind now, you have to really put that down, because if not, you're just going to be leaving money on the table, and that's no way to run a business.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's great.
And you can't be afraid to, yes, when you're starting out, sometimes you take all the jobs that come your way, just because you need to build a portfolio, you need to show people that you can do it. But like, if there was one thing that I could tell myself going all the way back to when I started, it's that there are some jobs that you should just walk away from, that you think that, you know, they say, hey, you know, we need it for this price, and you run the numbers and you realize that that's not going to work, and that's not a project that you are comfortable building, and you get a bad feeling from the client, and you know it's going to be a terrible install, and you just see all these red flags, and you're like, oh, I'm starting out and I don't know what to, you know, I want to make a name for myself. But those projects you just end up losing money, you lose time, you get stressed out on the business, you always walk away with a client that's not going to recommend you to somebody else, and you just have to start valuing yourself and valuing your time, and you have to learn when to walk away. And it's terrible to leave money on the table, and I still have trouble doing it, but that's one thing that I would recommend. You know, a step back from pricing before you even get to that is you have to know when it's a bad job and to walk away.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you're right. I think valuing your time and valuing the effort that you put into it is just as important. And no, that's great. Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah, because there's no reason, like working for yourself, there's no reason to work for yourself if you wake up every day and you hate it and you're stressed and you're not making any money. Like, you could if you love woodworking, you could easily go to work for somebody else, and you can put in the hours, and you could work 8 to 5, and you could leave, and somebody else could have that stress, and you could just get a design, you could build it, and you could just go home, and you could have a beer at the end of the day and relax. But you know, running your own business, it is 24/7. You are always thinking about it, and you know, you want to know that you're taking good jobs, and you want to know that you're going to be, you know, you're always going to hate it, because it's woodworking is a very, very stressful and hard industry, but at least you know that you've made your own choice and you've made your own path with that. So always know when to walk away, and always value your time, I guess, is the best answer.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Righty. I think I have a question more for myself, because I get a lot of these new guys coming in woodworking, and like I told you, I went to school for dental hygiene, so this is not my area of expertise. So when these guys come in and they are just starting out, what pieces of equipment would you recommend purchasing just to get up and going? You know, just the bare bones that just every woodworker should have in their toolbox, I guess, or in their shop.
Yeah. It depends on what you're doing a lot. If you decide you want to do bigger stuff, you want to do smaller stuff. Some people, you know, want to jump into epoxy. Some people want to jump into outdoor furniture, art pieces, more carving. So there's a lot of stuff like that out there. You know, table saw. Super basic. I recommend SawStop. I know they're expensive. I know that everyone, you know, who has one gives a thumbs up and says, you know, high fives, and everyone who doesn't have one says they're so expensive, and they, you know, if you're really a woodworker, you know, I have all this experience and not gonna, you know, you can't. I've been doing this forever. You know, I have guys in the shop who have set it off. I know in schools, you know, people set it off. You have to, again, going back to valuing yourself, you have to value yourself, and you have to value your hands, which are your tool. That's your starting tool. That's your main tool. So a SawStop, and they do contractor saws. So they're less expensive, but safety in the shop is the #1 priority for me. Even if it wasn't safe, I still think it's the best saw on the market. They are expensive. I work with them a lot, and I do a lot of trade shows with them. They don't do a lot of sales, but they do sales when they do trade shows. So the woodworking shows and things like that, they're around the country, and they sell the models off the floor for discounted if people are looking for that. Just a little tidbit. I don't know if that helps anyone. So table saw, jigsaw, super important. Chop saw, super important. And obviously a drill driver set, and a router. And a router and a router base like that you can undermount, because I do a lot of stuff that people think you would need a CNC for, and you would need to spend, you know, $10,000 on a giant CNC. And I just make templates, and that's what I do. I have tons of templates all around the shop, all hung up, that I jigsaw out my design, and I clean it up, and then I just throw it onto a board, and I can just underroute that thing all day long, and I get the exact same thing that you'd get with a $10,000 4x8 or $20,000 4x8 CNC. I get that with a $100 router and a $50 piece of cheap 1/2-inch plywood. So shop saw, table saw, good shop vac because you don't want to be spending all your time cleaning stuff up, and router, and I forget where the list was, but it's recorded, so I'll go back to that. But yeah, and I don't recommend going out there. So I'm sponsored by a lot of different tool companies, so I get a ton of different tools, and I have a ton of different tools, and a lot of people look at my shop and they say, if I want to be a professional woodworker, I need all these tools. And the truth is, you don't. And you can do so much with, I don't have, you can't tell anyone, but I don't have a jointer planer in my shop. I do a lot of solid wood furniture, and I don't. I get it. You know, I have a good relationship with the lumber yards that I go to, and you know, you tip the guy extra $5, he planes it down for you, you bring it to the shop, you don't have any of that work, you don't have any of that time on your own, you don't have to maintain blades. I'm not recommending that for everyone, that's just how I do it. I do I do a lot of it on the table saw, I clean up my edges. I'm just used to running a shop like that, and it's not for everyone, but you know, that's something that you would think a very professional shop that I am would have, and I've gotten by without having one. So you don't need all these tools that you see, and yeah, they're beautiful and they're exciting and everyone loves tools, but you don't. And I would recommend getting the basics and then buying the tools as the jobs come along. Like, everyone wants a domino, but you don't need a domino unless you have a job that requires a domino. You can do it with simple doweling. You can do it in a lot of biscuits. You can do it in a lot of different ways. So once you have that job that you know can pay for it, then you get the tool. And it's so different for brands of tools. People say, you know, I see you have all these different tools. What's the best brand of tool? And the best brand of tool is the one that you can afford and the one that you already have the batteries for. Like, for example, I did a big Festool charity build in Texas, like I guess a year ago. I don't know, time's very strange right now. I feel like it's jumping time and I have no idea when everything was, but I did a Festool event and working with Festool for like, you know, 4 days straight, all those tools. And then I jumped back to New York, and Hart Tools, which is the new Walmart brand, new in-store Walmart brand. It's done by TTI, which is the same people that do Milwaukee. They were like, oh, you know, I was trying out their tools, and they're mostly for the DIY consumer. And they're like, oh, you know, we're really interested in seeing how, you know, you did the Festool stuff, and now we want to know how these hold up. And they hold up fine. Like, it used to be cordless. You'd buy something from like Black & Decker 10 years ago, and it would last for 5 minutes, and then it would die and it wouldn't work and you couldn't complete your job. But you can get, if I had an entire shop full of Ryobi tools, I could still get the job done. It would take longer, but I could still get the job done. And if you don't need the name recognition, like, you can do a lot of stuff with not a lot of tools and not a lot of expensive tools. And it's just about the skill and the time you put in. So, you know, those main tools I would recommend, and also don't overbuy tools that you don't need. So, you know, I don't know. That was a long answer.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great.
I'm sorry for
keeping Zach's face when he said he didn't have a joiner or planer. Should have seen Zach's face when he said you don't have a joiner or planer. He was like,
I know, yeah. You should see everyone's face, and they're like, "How did you make this table?" And I'm like, no, "It's time because think of the time that you put in. If you're talking hourly and you're doing you're billing things hourly.
Yeah.
The time that you put in physically running that every single day, the electrical cost, the cleaning out the machine, just the wear and tear on your ears, just all that stuff that you're not, that's just like, yeah, right. That's why you were muted the whole time. Just the wear and tear on the shop. And when that's happening, you're not building stuff. So if you have a good relationship with your lumber yard or the people you're getting wood from, and you're either ordering a lot and saying, I need it this thickness, or you're going there and you're picking it and you're saying, hey man, you know, 20 bucks, if you could just run this for me, that is, you know, that's $20. That is your hourly rate. That becomes your hourly rate for the 2 hours it would take you to plane down exactly what that would cost in your shop for you to do. And lumberyards are going to have much better and bigger and wider planers, jointers, and clean it up for you, because that's what they do all day. They're not building stuff. Like, you're not in business to clean up wood, you're in business to build furniture. So
Right. That makes sense. I think Casey has a question too.
Sorry, Mike Harris, I physically saw you raise your hand. So
I saw that too, and I don't know.
I didn't see it.
I didn't know who was the hierarchy, so I wasn't
Oh,
gonna.
there you go.
well, real quick, Mike, why don't you ask your question, and then I wanted to, because we've had you for an hour and 5 minutes, and I know your time's valuable, but so Mike, go ahead and fire your questions, and then Zach and Caleb, I'll let you guys ask yours, and then I'll ask my last question just to close out, and then Brooke, you can close.
And I'm sorry if I'm talking too much on any of these questions. And if anyone has any questions, my direct email is just ethan@ethanabramson.com. And I'm more than happy to answer any, take your questions off the air. If that, feel free to reach out at any time. I'm always happy to help out with anything I can, or send you to somebody else who would be able to answer the question. So
That's
Mike.
awesome. Thank you.
Ethan, I'm not a woodworker, but in reference to our apprentice, I'm asking the question. You mentioned the shows that you go to. Obviously, you're at that ability to do that, and I'm thinking financially. But how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would you recommend going to a show? And number 2, how often should they go to a show? Meaning, what are they really going to gain from going to these shows? Is it meeting people, or is it ideas, or don't even go?
So these shows, like I'm the event host, so I get sent there. So that's the reason why I'm going. A lot of these shows are tool shows, and they are shows that you can go, and if you're getting bigger tools, if you're getting if you're spending over $10,000 on something, big clamp rack, big something like that, it's good to go to actually get a feel for it. It's a big investment. If you're just going for just getting a drill and just want to check out these drills, then if it's not in your backyard, don't fly to Vegas for this show. They're exciting, they're fun. You get to see a lot of tools. You get to see a lot of tools that you don't know, but cost analysis, you could very easily spend that time just looking through all the company websites that are going to be there. So unless for the tool things, then unless it's very close, or unless you love tools. There are people who I know who just love tools, and they just want to see all the new stuff. They want to play with it. They want to, meet the reps. They want to do all that. That's great. Go for it. And then I highly recommend them. They're amazing. But a lot of these companies have reps in the area for smaller tools that you could schedule a meeting with. They could come to your shop. They could check it out. For like maker events and things like that, if people are interested in that, those are a lot more meeting the community, meeting people face to face, getting a good feeling for the people out there, and learning from your fellow makers. So those are good events. I know that those can sometimes be expensive. And there's shows like, there's local shows. There's a lot of local shows in different cities and states where a lot of people just get together, and maybe it's not even, it's not even a paying thing. It's just a couple people get together for some beers and some food, just to talk about local business. I highly recommend those. It's the same as meeting on the internet, but you just make a physical connection like that. So I think that answered your question.
Thanks, sir.
All right. I don't know who was up, Caleb or Zach. Who went first?
I had Zach first. So
Zach,
just
okay.
Yeah. Hey, Ethan, I made the face because the joiner was the one, not necessarily the planer. I get a lot of reclaim wood out here, or get cupping and bowing. And so facing the board and edging it before I run it through the table saw. The joiner for me is probably, the table saw and the joiner are just, those are super important to me, but and SawStop does have an override for turning off that safety mechanism if people are wondering. A lot of people don't realize that and they get paranoid about that.
Yep.
But sorry, go ahead.
I just said they have that key. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even know that's an option. Well, it's built into it. But my original question was on, do you try to stick to a certain amount or a certain stock of your wood, like oak, walnut, cherry, or whatever it may be? I have a lot of exotics I'll get. I try not to use them because when I go down to pricing, you know, I buy by board foot, and I go in and I get rough cut timber. And so when I bid someone out, you know, if they want, I'm just making this up, if they want a 9-foot piece and I can only get 10 feet of it, I'm charging them for the full 10. I'm not going to bite the cost on that extra foot of the board foot. But I generally try to stick to my maples, oaks, walnuts, things that when people ask me to do a build for them and I'm bidding off that board foot, I can give them a quicker response on an idea. You know, the instant gratification, if you can tell someone the cost, the faster the probability of closing that deal is going to be a lot better. And I'm just wondering, do you generally stick with typical types of wood so you can do that as well? Or are you in a position now where that's not necessarily the case?
I don't like to keep, for solid wood, I don't like to keep a lot of stuff in stock. It doesn't, I'm not into, you know, I'm not doing the quick 2-day turnaround job. I'm not, you know, I'm not throwing it together. I'm bidding it out in, you know, I have very good I have like 4 to 5 week turnarounds, 4 to 6 week turnaround for pretty much everything that comes through the shop. But I don't want to keep, I keep sheet goods. I keep, you know, basic sheet goods just so I'm not always having to get that. But for solid lumber, each project is going to, I'm very into the idea of each project dictating the wood that I'm using. And I am a very big fan of when I know what the project is and I know the feel for it and I know where it's going. I go to the lumber yard and I get it there. And sometimes I end up screwing myself because they could be short on lumber and they could be like, oh, we're getting a shipment in, you know, next week. And I either have to go to a new place or I have to delay the job. But I don't want to have, you know, I don't want to have hundreds and hundreds of board feet of walnut and then, you know, have a client that wants a lighter walnut and, you know, I have to get a different grain pattern. And then I'm just sitting on all this money that I've invested, because all it is money. If you're not selling it, then it's just money that you've spent that you can't get back because you can't return it. And you're rarely going to get an order for the exact same amount of wood. So I like to get it on a job by job basis. That's my personal opinion. I have friends who have entire lumber yards worth of material in their shop that they just grab from. I feel like that's not helpful for me because each job is different and I want to approach each job differently. And I don't want to lay out, you know, $20,000 for a pallet of, you know, a giant pallet of walnut and then not have a walnut job for a year. And then I'm like, why do I have all this stuff sitting around?
Yeah, I guess, I'm sorry, that is one. I usually don't keep excessive amounts of stock. A lot of times I'll find that I get buried in a project and sometimes it's not sitting on my racks all perfectly, or I have a nice piece standing up and I'll forget about it for a couple weeks and all of a sudden it starts twisting and cupping, and because I wasn't storing it right, or I left a nice piece outside my house that I was cutting. I guess I was more along the lines of, do you try to stick with typical woods that you're more comfortable? Yeah, that you're more comfortable with and you can bid easier. like I said, like I'm pretty sure I ruined a saw blade yesterday. Last night cutting Purple Heart, by the way. I sent a lot of.
Sure, I didn't see it, but I'm sure you did too. Because
yeah, it was. I was milling down a fairly sizable piece of Purple Heart for some butcher blocks, but yeah, no, I try to stick with maple, oak, walnut, and things that I can bid easier. So when I go, I don't have to call the lumber yard every time, but when I go there, I can be pretty damn sure that the price point of the board foot is going to stay pretty on par, because I go in there frequently enough, I stay in tune with what it is. That I guess that was more my question of where you're at with a lot of the wood you use.
I like to stick with like American woods, walnut, oak. I really like to use ash instead of oak because it's easier to work with. It has beautiful grain. It's usually half the price. And no one really knows the difference, especially if you're doing some type of stain or even if you're leaving it pretty clear. It's pretty similar. So yeah, when I'm trying to price something out like that, I will usually stick in that wheelhouse. I don't like to do a lot of exotics. I don't like to do a lot of that kind of stuff. But again, the job dictates what, if somebody's coming to me for, a rosewood inlay, then I'm not going to say, hey, have you heard of maple? I'm going to keep it with that. But I like to stick with the pretty standard American solid woods, walnut, maple, oak, and ash, because you can get a lot out of those.
Well, I got some paddock sitting in my garage right now, and I did a project with it, and I have, how many people want some tiger wood, so it's kind of, I got some paddock sitting in there. Mm-hmm. So, but that does answer my question, just kind of standardizing to a degree, but still having that mobility for the other stuff, but trying to keep a standardized stock of what you use. So thank you.
No problem.
Great. I think we got Caleb has a question, then Casey has a quick one, and then we'll try to get you wrapped up and out of here. I know it's been a little longer than I told you it was going to be.
No worries. I'm super happy to do this. This is what I like to do, and
awesome.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate it. All right, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you. So Ethan, kind of the situation I'm in right now is like, I just got set up, and I'm looking at dust collection systems and some of the other things I want to get. I do actually, I think for the things I'm making and size, I actually do need to get a joiner. And one of the things I'm looking at is trying to not go cheap, because I know that's kind of bit me in the butt in the past, but actually not kind of go overboard, because for in this instance, I'm looking at equipment that, requires 220 volt outlets, which I don't have, which, I'd have to go and get those as well. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do you kind of prioritize the equipment to help in future projects, I guess? It's not a very clear question, I don't think. But
I think that sort of goes a little bit back towards, you don't need to buy all the tools at one time. You can buy them as the job, goes. Like if you, I don't know exactly, what you're building or the level for dust collection that you need. I run like a couple small deltas that are just attached to each machine, so I don't have a tremendous amount of not like Calvin. I don't have tons of stuff going, all the ducting and everything like that. I'm pretty just machine based, and I found that works out a little bit better for me, especially since I have to change the shop sometimes. I am very jealous of people who have those amazing ducting systems in there, and the giant dust collector in the back closet that they only have to change once every 2 years, and they have 500 pounds of sawdust in there. So smaller dust collection systems, and it's not a bad thing to have to be so successful that you have to upgrade your tools. you don't have to feel like, oh, now I have all these more jobs and I need to put in like a bigger dust collection system and I need all this. Like that is a good thing. You want to hit that level where you're like, I need to start spending more money on tools. So there's nothing wrong with getting never cheap out on stuff, never get like bad tools, because that's always going to hurt you and make more work for you. But there's nothing wrong with getting like a mid-level rigid vacuum for a tool, and then a year later you're like, this isn't good, I need to upgrade to a Festool vacuum. There's nothing wrong with that. There's always going to be a market for used tools that you can give to somebody. There's always going to be a market. There's always going to be in your shop. You're doing reclaimed. You get a chop saw and you upgrade it in a year, and you're like, what am I going to do with this? There's always going to be that board that you think has nails in it, that you think is going to mess up your good tools, and you can just pull that out. So I would not overbuy to begin with, especially if you don't need to, but I would not feel bad about upgrading in the future. And like, just getting back to dust collecting, I have smaller, less expensive ones dedicated to each machine.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Casey.
Ethan, I have a question. It comes up often, not just with my woodworking apprentices, but across the board. And I'm a budget guy. I'm a numbers guy. I love looking at the numbers. How can they work? And one of the things, it's a rule of thumb from a book that I read, but I wanted to get your point of view on this. And the question is, what percentage of every job do you squirrel away? So gross revenue, net profit, however you figure it out, what percentage of that dollar that comes to you do you put away in an account for those types of equipment? Or do you even think in that way?
So I always sound like a jerk when I say this, but like I haven't bought new tools for like 7 years. I'm in a very lucky position that I work my way into sponsorships, and so I get new tools sent to me to review and to look at, and so I don't have that same budgetary setup for having to for tools like that. And I know that that's a giant part of a business, and so I have a different take on that, but I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for that. I think that it's basically whatever you need to survive, you need to take out of that. Some months you're going to have some months you're going to have bigger bills. Some months you're going to go on vacation. Some months you're going to do that. Like I know that if I have money coming in, then I can take some out. I guess I don't really have a great answer for that. A specific, one that would satisfy you as a numbers kind of budget guy. I know that I need to set away an appropriate amount to pay the guys who work for me, and to keep the lights on, and then at the end of the day walk away where it's worth it owning my own business.
Yeah, no, that helps. I mean, not everybody's going to be at your level where they're getting sponsorship in woodworking. I didn't even know that was a thing, and it's fantastic.
And I highly recommend everyone, if you have. It sounds crazy, but every tool company has a media budget, and every tool company now has a social media marketer. And if there's a company that you like, or there's a tool that you like, you can reach out. And I'm not saying you get it every time, and I'm not saying you get it 90%, 80%, 70%, 50% of the time. But you can always feel free to reach out, and there's a lot of contests out there, and there's a lot of if you make good content, people want to send you stuff.
Casey,
and that's
Casey and Ethan. I'm going to give you a great story to jump in on what Ethan just said, and for the other guys. I have a nephew that did exactly that same thing. and he put Ryobi on his icon for his social media. And in any time that he put his work up, he explained that he used Ryobi tools, Ryobi. The social media individual that Ethan's talking about contacted my nephew Kenneth, and next thing you know, he's getting loads of new tools coming to his house. New tools. He hasn't paid for tools for years. And so it is a great way. And I was hoping somebody would say something like that. The guys that are listening and watching, get those names out there, and they know you're using their stuff. They're going to contact you. And he's done very well because of it. He quit an executive job to stay in just woodworking.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that we're running late, but like the last thing that I'll leave you guys with, and again, any woodworking questions, anything that you guys want, and feel free to give my email out to anyone who was not able to be on this call. I will do my best to answer in a timely manner any questions anyone has. But I would leave it with I started this saying, I'm not a computer guy. I don't like being on the computer, except that, I've talked for an hour and a half or however long it is. So it might seem like I do, but I just lucked into and found that social media is a thing for getting, just getting connected with people. And you might not have that outgoing personality. You might not have, feel like you have the camera skills, feel like you have the ability to do that, or even the time. But it is a great investment to do your time, because you're in the shop, you're making stuff. Everyone has their own story, whether you think it's great or you think it's terrible, but people are interested. People are always interested. And you can just make so many connections and just get a lot of stuff, like make money, get stuff, and just understand the business so much better if you connect with people and you put it out there. And I highly recommend it as somebody who does it, and I would highly recommend it. It's hard, and it's not going to be for everyone, and it's not always going to work, and you could put as much time as you want into it, and a year goes by and you're like, Ethan has no idea what he's talking about, I haven't gotten any free tools. Or you could or you could post something today and a giant account could repost it, or Bosch could pick it up and say, we love this tool, they reposted it, and you're off to the races. So you have nothing to lose but the time you put into it.
Yeah, and it's a free resource too.
Free resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, does anybody have any more questions at all? Going once, twice? Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everybody for being with us. It was such a great discussion. I took a lot away from it. Thank you, Ethan, again, for taking the time out of your day to chat with all of us. I know we all learned a lot. Well,
I hope I didn't talk too much. I apologize if I
No,
did.
it was great. It's great. You're the expert, so the more you talk, it was better. Awesome. So thank you everybody again, and we will all be chatting soon. If you also, we will send out Ethan's email address. If you guys do email him, if you don't mind copying your advisor on that email, we would appreciate that. So awesome. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a good
Take
day.
care. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.